upset with them. I think there are other things that we can do that are obvious and important. You look at the state of Florida working on a plan to provide free PrEP for anybody in a high-risk category. We ought to, if they can do it in Florida, we ought to be able to do it here. The idea that you have to go, the only place outside of Chicago, Peoria, where you can get therapy that should be available in every community in Illinois. The fact is that we under pressures that they're subject to. And in the city of Chicago, we closed half the mental health care facilities. If we believe that we should care for a broken arm, then our community ought to believe that we should care for a mind that's in trouble as well. I think that what we need more than anything is leadership in our state. And if the LGBTQ community is represented in state government, all of the things that I've just described will occur. And it'll be represented if I'm the governor. Thank you very much.
Well, first and foremost, we know that the population that we're talking about is a vulnerable population that in some instances is denied services, because whether or not we have affordable health care, which I strongly support, and I support a single-payer plan as well, to provide health care for all populations, but we need to have community outreach centers in which black males, white males, females, etc., can go to community health service centers for immediate health needs, and that will help stop the our populations to prevent the spread of HIV.
Health services are to be responsive to HIV testing and to ensure that we're treating unless we have a progressive income tax in this state. Racist, misogynist, xenophobe Donald Trump and his partner, Mike Pence. And I've been doing that for 2 years, and I'm not going to stop. You've got to have a governor that's protecting the people of Illinois and the LGBTQ community. I've been doing that for decades, and I'll continue to do it for LGBTQ services. And thank you for the question, and to the people in East St. Louis who sent us that question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be asked by Penny Martin Ocasio.
Thanks, Ryan, and good evening, candidates.
Can you hear me? Okay, the mic is on. What happened? Here we go.
I've always been a champion, speaking up for the underdog throughout my entire life. I was born and raised in the heart of the ghetto people, the Henry Warner Projects and Avalon Park community. So when it comes down to standing up for Chancellor Rahm Emanuel as well here in Chicago, just to be honest with you, we need a governor's. I know about the disparities and over-incarceration. We represent need a lot of help. And don't get me wrong, even though I'm African American, I'm running for everybody. I plan to step up as I look at every beings. We must stand up to this clarion call for action in the state of Illinois. So I plan to set forth a task force to take a look at how people are being treated from the LGBT community in these juvenile centers and the Illinois Department of Corrections and make immediate changes. Governor Rauner just stated that he was not in charge. So my recommendation to Governor Rauner, you need to step aside and let it go.
But if you show up for a court, you can't make bail. The judge who set that bail is going to set your sentence. We know that we've criminalized race. We know that African Americans are presumed to be guilty by a police officer, whether they're white or black. That a judge is more apt to find an African American guilty than a white suspect and to sentence them to longer sentences. Just like we've criminalized poverty, just like we've criminalized race, we've criminalized sexual orientation. You cannot have 40% of women in prison self-report that they're identifying as members of the LGBTQ community and believe that our system is fair. The fact is we have very little data, and we don't research it. When I was growing up, probably in America, people thought 3% of all Americans were members of the LGBTQ community. It's much easier to discriminate against 3% of the population than against 7%. And we need more and greater research, but in prison there's so many things that we can do. And there's so many things we can do in the criminal justice system. The thing about race, the thing about about poverty is that we know how to counteract those. Just as we can counteract those prejudices, we can do it with the LGBTQ community as well. We can pour other meds. We can make sure that every prison guard has and that's immoral.
If we are truly going to address the issue of this population facing incarceration, we have to address the issues we have with the Juvenile Justice Council. And we have to have members of mentoring in our schools. We need mentoring in our culture to help young people find a place, find what their fullest potential is, to live productive lives, and to achieve greatness, whether they're part of the LB.
Importantly, that question was aimed, I think, specifically at our schools pipeline. We've got to end that. We've got to keep kids out of prison, keep them out of the juvenile justice system. It's one of the reasons that I endowed the child individuals, kids and adults alike, are the most abused.
Training for officials regarding unconscious bias to help them understand that they bring to the workplace biases that result in fundamentally unfair treatments of individuals from different communities. We need that kind of training, and we need a criminal justice system that is fundamentally about restoration and re-entry, not about creating categories of people that we then seek to punish and lock up. These transformations are profound, but they are doable. And the most important way to do them is to have every action rooted in the fundamental idea that we haven't been treating everyone as though they are fully human, and it's time for us to acknowledge and respect and love the humanity of every single person, regardless of how they're currently interacting with the criminal justice system.
Senator Visser, time. Thank you. And our last question before the lightning round will be asked by Kim.
This question comes from Jennifer in Highland Park. As a proud parent of an 11-year-old transgender daughter, our family recognizes how fortunate we are to live in a supportive community with school districts that have robust gender-inclusive policies. But we
That's all we want. Illinois is, because if you compare graduating, and so much of it occurs because we fail to nurture young people, and we subject them to incredible abuse, to a level of humanity that we wouldn't want ourselves subjected to.
Mr.
And it doesn't have to be like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be like that.
I'm going to begin with the back part of the question as to what I would tell the young girl. I would tell her to be proud. I would tell her to be strong. I'd tell her to lead.
Jennifer's child in that district. But you know, kids all across Illinois are going to school, transgender kids, afraid. Some of them not going to school at all and dropping out. And in fact, the suicide rate is high among transgender children. So we need to protect those children, not just in the wealthy communities like Highland Park, but all across the state of Illinois. It's not just in Chicago. Everywhere, Carbondale and Rockford and Champaign. I mean, we need to stand up for them. And how are we going to do that? Well, as governor, I'm going to direct the Illinois State Board of Education to set guidelines for schools. And then we've got to make sure that those schools live up to those guidelines, because there's nothing more important than protecting the children of this state, transgender or not.
Senator Biss.
To Jennifer, I would say thank you. We love you. We love your transgender child. We admire your love and support for your transgender child, and we know the fear that you know. We know the fear that you know about whether or not your child will be accepted in the school district today or in the school district tomorrow, in the college or the workplace after that. We know the statistics you've read because we've read them too, about the future that awaits transgender children who are not supported and loved by, yes, their parents, but also their communities and also their schools. And we're here to transform society so those fears will become an ugly, ugly, ugly history. Part of what we have to do is amend the Constitution to protect gender identity and sexual orientation so we don't have to fight school district by school district. I've been proud to fight in school district after school district for sane policies, but that's not good enough. It needs to be in the Constitution. There shouldn't be any government form in the state of Illinois where you got to check the box male or female. There shouldn't be one, because the act of telling someone you got to check one of those two boxes is the act of telling someone you are not fully a citizen. It's not right. It's not right. We need to make sure that all healthcare needs of the transgender community are fully met, universally met on all occasions. And we need to educate everybody everywhere. We need to stand up to misgendering when we see it happen. We need to lift up the brave, openly transgender people who go through life knowing that they are putting themselves at risk of assault or attack. And we have to stand with them, shoulder to shoulder. You have to support members of the transgender community who either don't feel safe being openly transgender or just don't want to, quietly in other ways. As allies who, in my case, as a cisgender man, acknowledges my privilege and uses my privilege to help lift up voices who don't have that. We can do these things. We have to do these things, and we have to do them now.
Mr. Hardeman, yeah. We'll do belts and suspenders on
We
this.
just go with the
Thank you for your
microphone here.
patience.
Now, the reality is, Governor, we have to pass policies that work for everybody. I'm one of the only candidates sitting up here that experienced discrimination and racism in my personal life. So I would like for your daughter to know, as governor, I plan to take her by the hand and lead the charge. You know, they have the Leave No Child Behind Act, Leave No Transgender Child Behind as well. We have to stand up for everybody. And I'm not saying this just to get a round of applause. I'm saying this because I'm sincere about standing up for the underdog, the people that are being taken advantage of. We have to stand up every step of the way. I got a chance to visit a restaurant in Benton, Arkansas some years ago, right? And I'm looking forward to it. That's right.
Yes.
Yes,
It could be lonely, but I will.
Yes, and I hope he shows up.
Or she. Or she.
That's right. That's right. Yes, and I can hardly wait.
Yes, I'll be there regardless of whether I'm the nominee, but the good news is I'll be the nominee.
All right. Lightning round. Our next wave of questions, we will turn it over to Imani, who is asking this question. And Mr. Kennedy, you will be the first one to answer. We're going to do a little handoff here with Mr. Hardeman. Thank you.
What's happening?
Okay, this question comes from Rashida, a 73-year-old senior from Bronzeville. A recent study from the National Senior Citizens Law Center reported that 80% of LGBTQ older adults and their care providers don't feel that that LGBTQ people can live openly in care settings without experiencing discrimination. As governor, what would you do to create more affordable and inclusive housing opportunities for aging LGBTQ people?
Do I need the...
Now we're just going to...
Oh, that's very nice of you. Tio, don't use that while I'm talking. I think from cradle to grave, the underfunding, underplanning, under-thoughtfulness of the state government and the city government around LGBTQ issues is incredible. And it doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't. People shouldn't go to sleep at night worried about what's going to happen to them when they get older. There are things that we can do. We can adopt ideas that have been pioneered in other states. provide great housing opportunities for people as they get older. But this government in our city, the government in our state, that's not the Bronzeville alone. They've closed a school in Bronzeville every year, once a year for 18 years. That's not a government that believes in communal action. That's not a government that says we want to protect the people who are part of our large American family. The idea that we have to wrestle with issues about how to provide long-term housing that's been fixed in other states, where we can simply adopt the formulas that have worked elsewhere, that's not how it ought to be in Illinois. All you have to do is take the learning that we've created here, important populations, and replicate that so that everybody has a home in Illinois. The issue here is that, we don't want to die alone. And the entire millennial generation is leaving. And that generation needs to be here to care for all of us. And if we don't turn things around, if we don't stop that out-migration of the generation that's most likely to embrace LGBTQ rights, well, we end up with a disaster. And that's where we're headed, unless we change out Governor Rauner. Thank you.
Well, there should be no gender identification on real estate or on rental or on any community properties. That should not be a discriminating factor. I live in a very conservative community, but I'm proud to tell you that 2 gay lesbian ladies own my grandmother's home, and they live there proudly in our community. I participated in an event in Ridgeway, Illinois. I know you don't know where that is. Deep southern Illinois, highly conservative. 2 gay men came up to me and said, we want to invite you in our home and we want you to feel welcome to use it any time. But I want to tell you how difficult it was for us to live in this community and to purchase this house because people discriminated against them, and that's just not right. So in all of Illinois, as I've said, gender identification cannot be part of policies that are part of the Illinois Realtors Association, that are part of any organization in the state that deny anyone the right to purchase property or to rent property. As governor and as that administration we previously talked about in that rapid fire round of questions, will make sure that is possible.
Mr. Pritzker.
Let's start with, we need quality trained personnel providing senior care in this state. And I've been proud to stand with SEIU Healthcare in fighting for $15 minimum wage. That ought to be a minimum. We should attract great people to this profession, and very important to provide the training that's necessary so that there's an understanding among the personnel of all the issues that are important to LGBTQ community members among our senior population. But there's another thing. Bruce Rauner cut home care in this state significantly, the result of which is people are forced out of their homes and into a senior facility when they don't want to be. Home care is a less expensive, better option for most people. So let's fully fund our home care and make sure that seniors get the kind of services that they deserve, because they're our elders. It's our obligation.
Senator Best.
I couldn't hear the question.
This is a really, really important question. You could tell by all the nodding and all the comments that we heard from the audience as the question was being asked. Let's just for a second put a pin in the fact that there is a much more significant, widespread problem of discrimination against LGBTQ individuals among the older generation. That's not right. That's not fair. That's a problem. We're going to talk about how to solve that problem. But it's also a sign of progress. It's a sign of the battles that we're winning. It's a sign of the work that we've done to change hearts and minds in this country. And I think we just need to talk about the extraordinary success of the movement represented by people in transforming society in pretty profound ways. It doesn't mean that things are a picnic for younger members of the LGBTQ community, but it's a lot different than it used to be. Thank you for your work on that front. Now, this is one of these issues where, as some of the earlier speakers mentioned, I feel like when we make policy, we forget that there are LGBTQ people everywhere. There are wonderful retirement communities on Halsted Street that are inclusive and that are welcoming, but there are LGBTQ seniors everywhere. And we don't have the same universality. So what do we need to do? We need clear, strong, aggressive enforcement of the existing anti-discrimination laws. We need to strengthen and toughen those laws. And then we need to have the kind of well-trained, well-paid staff providing service, care in these various facilities. That's why Letisa and I have been fighting for raising wages for caregivers and for universal elder care. So someone is not obligated based upon income or based upon wealth to find themselves cared for by people who are not qualified and not trained. These things are doable. Other states get them right. When I'm governor, Illinois will also.
Thank you. Mr. Hardiman.
Okay, when it comes down to supporting senior citizens here in Illinois, that's a no-brainer. What I plan to do is about how you're going to get the job done. There's a House bill right now, House Bill 453. It's the financial transaction tax, which can bring in $3 billion of new revenue here in the state of Illinois. And what I would do is sign that bill immediately and use some of those funds to support senior citizen programs for LGBT community members as well. I think it's very important because talk is cheap. People need help in Illinois. And like J.B. Pritzker was saying, how Bruce Rauner shut down a lot of the programs, it's totally unacceptable. And I don't want to come off as an angry black man. Let me make that clear, because I do have a sense of humor. My ancestors were brought over here on the bottom of slave ships. It took my ancestors 400 years to fight for their freedom, and I'm still fighting for reparations for my people as well. I just want to say that to you. So I would like to applaud the LGBT community, because over the last 30 years, the LGBT community has made a lot of gains, but more work has to be done. And I would like to become a part of your movement and take care of the business on every level for the seniors, the children, and everybody. A state that does not take care of their senior citizens and the children and the women, that's a state that's being led in the wrong direction. All right? And that's what I plan to do for you. And just hear me clearly, people. This is what I have in my spirit. I'm not just saying this because I'm running for governor. I'm saying this because I really mean it. I'm passionate about all people, and all people need help, and we're going to get you the help you need. The senior citizens, okay? All right.
Hardiman. Next question will be asked by Kenny.
Thanks, Ryan. This question actually comes from Marco in Elgin, and I believe Marco is watching us as well. An estimated 267,000 undocumented individuals in the U.S. identify as LGBTQ. This year, we have seen the Trump administration's outright hostility to immigrants and actions to restrict immigration. In addition to what the state and the cities are doing to protect the undocumented immigrants, what specific actions will your administration take to support the immigrant community